going to start out this morning talking about new EPICS features coming soon. And by coming soon, I mean probably before all these, hopefully by the end of the year. These are all things that are actively under development. In the next session, Stefan's going to talk about a couple other things that are also under development. So we want you for both these sessions to take notes. And so if you see something that we're talking about either in this session or in the next session, particularly if it's something that's already on your wish list, please send us your suggestions, your questions, things like that. So it might save you a wish list item. If there's something that I'm going to talk about here that Stefan's going to talk about next session, don't burn a wish list item on it. Send the ideas to us right now so that we can incorporate those into these things that we're about to talk about. So again, please take notes. Don't necessarily send them, right now. What we hope is that you'll review these and then talk about them with your department heads and collect all their ideas and then send them to us. And so we'll request that you send those to the help desk so that we can then route them to the appropriate place. But we're really looking for your ideas on this. These are not finished items. These are things we're working on right now. And so now is the time to get your ideas in. So we're going to start out first by talking about some improvements on the production side of things, to be able to collect data more than just the number of good pieces and downtime and so on, to be able to capture production quality checks that you have defined for each one of your departments. So in addition to collecting good pieces, we also want to know, well, did they measure these dimensions? Did they measure temperatures? Did they collect pressure readings? Whatever, do Webster readings, whatever is needed for a specific department. And you've been able to do that so far with adding user fields to the production tables. And I know a lot of you are doing that, but I know we always have requests, can we get more user fields? And it's usually for things like this, for being able to collect quality checks, things that you are requiring them to measure or observe at each department. So we are going to expand on that. And we're going to do that basically by adding a new table that will collect all of that data. And you will be able to specify department by department what fields you want to collect, what fields are required, which ones are optional, and to be able to build screens just like you can for user fields to collect all of that data at production. So here's a sample, and I apologize to I don't remember who sent me in this sample screen, so I hope I don't think I'm giving away any company secrets. But I did borrow this screen from somebody who sent it in saying, hey, can we do something like this? And so the answer is yes, we'll be able to do something like this. So this is just a sample tab, excuse me, sample tab of checks to be performed for extrusion jobs. So, this is all drawn out with the screen layout designer, a bunch of check boxes, a bunch of numeric fields, a bunch of date fields. So you can just lay this out however you want. Just like you can for user fields, you'll be able to do that for quality checks, but it won't be using up the user fields that you already have. It'll be an additional table. So again, you'll use the screen layout designer. You can have multiple tabs. We're going to throw a ton of user fields into this table. And that's maybe where your input can come in first. If you can tell us, what's worst case for the department that you collect the most data or that you want to collect the most data from. How many fields do you think you're going to need? Just ballpark. Just say, well, we're collecting, 27 numeric values from various stages of the quality check. We need 53 check boxes, whatever. You tell us what the maximum is you think you're going to need so that we have an idea of basically how big that table needs to be, how many possible values can be collected. And so those will then be collected at the time that you're posting production, whether it's on the production screen, maybe even on the packing screen, to be able to validate, that they've weighed the bundle and they've measured it and whatever they need to do for packing. So it will be extended to both production and to packing. And it will be then tied back to that production posting so that you can create reports that merge data from those two places. We can see not only how many pieces were produced, but also these quality checks were performed, these passed, these failed, and so on. So just a starting question, and I'm sure you'll have your own ideas about this, and we hope we hear all of them. But just as a starting point, is it enough to have just basically one quality check screen posting for the entire posting? Or do you need to have that for every single order item within the posting? So do we need to know not only that we did these quality checks for the entire paint run, but do we also need to do quality checks for each individual item within that paint run? So that's the sort of thing that we want to know. On what basis do you collect this data, and how much data there is? And like I say, you tell us from here. We're actively designing this right now, and we want to know everything you know about it. So that's the first thing that we're working on. Next up is finishing module improvements. And some of these, like the quality checks, that did come, the inspiration for that was a wish list item. So we're working on that. And some of these in finishing module are as well, but we're also looking we talk to you folks all the time. We wish we could talk to you more, honestly, in a lot of cases. We're not seeing people as much as we used to with the current travel restrictions, but we like to stay on top of things that are changing in the industry. And so based on feedback we get from you, based on AEC meetings we've attended, based on news articles, so we're trying to keep on top of things that are changing. And one of them is people are having more and more paint lines seem to be proliferating. We have a number of customers who are adding new paint lines and need better ways to track what's happening in those in the paint lines or the anodizing lines, as far as particularly consumables, paint, solvents, etc. So the things that we're working on are to be able to create purchase orders for those consumables. When you order paint, or when you order anodizing chemicals or solvents or whatever, to be able to create purchase orders directly in EPICS and then receive those the same way that you do for billet or for accessories now. So we're going to give you the ability to create those purchase orders, print them, and then as you receive those consumables, to be able to receive them and increase inventory immediately. Again, the same way that you do now for billet and for accessories. And then, of course, as you receive those in from your suppliers, to be able to print a tag to hang on each one of those containers. And so, I just dummied in here. This is just a very simple one, but basically showing the contents of each container. So this is a barrel of paint. And so I've barcoded at the top just the paint inventory ID, so that we can keep track of it and use it, scan that inventory ID as we're using that barrel. But also to reprint those as we're mixing them. So in this case, we've added a couple of solvents, and so the tag includes what the current contents of that barrel are. So that's the idea. Be able to print those tags out and scan them in when they're posting production, or when you're transferring or reducing paint, to be able to scan that, scan the barrel of paint, scan the solvent, indicate how much that you've added of that solvent, and keep track of that. In addition to being able then to keep track of the VOCs or HAP values for each one of those barrels. And one big improvement to what you can do now, to be able to add an unlimited number of components or containers of various components to be added to a single container. Right now, that limit is 4, and we're going to expand that by adding a child table. So if we added, solvent to this barrel 3 times from 3 different containers, you'll be able to keep track of that instead of just keeping the last 4. So that's going to be a big improvement there. Other improvements then, once we have the POs and the receivers and so on, also be able to manage paint inventory from the physical inventory. So there'll be a new tab on the physical inventory worksheet that will keep track of all those various paint components and anodizing chemicals and whatever you have in inventory for that. So just again, one place where you can do an inventory and keep track of all of those various items. So there'd be billet, work in process, stock and finished goods, and then also paint and anodizing chemicals. And somebody else asked recently, which was a great idea, to be able to, similar to posting a die trial on production where you don't have to have a sales order item, also be nice to be able to post a clean equipment job to basically, between color runs or for whatever reason, maybe the start of shift, you need to run a job to just post X amount of solvents to clean the equipment before the next job. So we'll be able to, we'll do that on the production screen as well. So it won't be attached to a job, it'll just be a separate job just to clean the equipment. Another nice request somebody made was to be able to automatically mark paint containers as they're emptied, mark them as inactive. Right now you have to do that manually, so it makes perfect sense. If EPICS thinks a container is empty, we might have a message pop up saying, is this empty or not? We're still working on that. But just ways to better manage inventory and mark that containers are now empty. They're still in inventory, so you can still see history, but they no longer will show up as available inventory. And also another request that came in recently was to be able to set a configurable limit, basically a config setting that says a container cannot contain more than X number of gallons or X number of pounds or X number of kg, whatever, so that hopefully to prevent mistakes. We don't add too much to a barrel as we're reducing it. So just again for sanity checks basically. And so here again, what have we forgotten? So if you already have things on your wish list for improvements to the finishing module, things you'd like to see in paint or anodizing, like I say, save the wish list items, send those in right now. Just send an email to help@foink.com and say, hey, we'd also like to see this, this, and this. And any examples you can provide, if it's something where a screenshot would be helpful, or scan a document and show us what your document looks like. Say now's the time we really want to see that. Excuse me. So moving on, billet inventory. Again, we've gotten a lot of great suggestions from folks, and we've been monitoring a lot of trends in the industry right now. We know billet is in short supply in a lot of cases, but the amount of information that your customers want about those billets seems to be increasing, and the amount of information that's coming from your suppliers also seems to be increasing right now, because everybody wants more information about where the billet came from and how it was produced, and was it recycled or not, and how much carbon was used to manufacture it, etc. So first off, we want you to be able to print a barcoded billet tag. So as you receive a cast in EPICS, to be able to just generate, and you can tell it how many you want. So we received this cast in, and we now need 27 tags with this cast number, because that's how many logs we received. Or if you just hang one on the pallet, we need 3 tags, one for each pallet of these logs or of these cut billet. So you then be able to hang that either on each billet or stick it on each billet, or again, attach it to the pallet or whatever that the billets are in, so that at time of production, then you can just scan that rack tag, or scan that cast tag. And again, this is just a dummy tag. It can look like whatever you want. It'll be a crystal designed report. And the main thing is, as long as the cast number itself is barcoded, then that's all that EPICS needs to retrieve the rest of the information about that cast. And then, as I said, if you're also collecting additional information from your supplier about that cast, again, whether it's energy use to produce it, or recyclability, or how much was recycled, how much carbon was used, etc., country of origin, whatever you want to capture, that's being sent over now by a lot of suppliers. They will put a QR code or other 2D barcode on their paperwork, and you scan that, and that sends you to a URL that lists a ton of information, or maybe pulls up a PDF that has a ton of information. And so we want you to be able to attach that directly to the cast in EPICS, so that you can either just keep that on file for your own purposes or pass it along to the customer. So you will be able to link either documents or URLs directly to each cast in EPICS as well. There'll be a new links tab on the chemical composition screen that will allow you to do that. So as I said, that tag also allows you to scan those billet tags at time of production. That's either when you're adding billets to the billet oven, or when you're loading them into the press, either one. Right now, you can basically select a cast from a drop-down list. This will allow you to actually scan that cast number on the tag. Basically, as Scott pointed out yesterday, scanning eliminates errors, make sure that it's a valid number, and that it's exactly the one you're looking at and not another one. So should really speed up selection of casts and improve accuracy, so that you were telling the customer exactly what cast we used for every run. So again, back up. Anything you have along those lines on your wish list regarding traceability of casts, information stored with each cast, being able to keep inventory on them, anything along those lines. Please don't put them on the wish list. Send them straight to us, because we are working on this right now, and we really want to know the ideas for everyone in your plant that deals with billet. So I think this is the last topic I'm going to talk about, and this one is a little more complicated. So I've got a couple of screenshots here, but I know a lot of you have fabrication departments, and I know EPICS allows you now to post what has been fabricated, and some of you have one just amorphous fab department that just handles all of these steps, and others of you track all the various processes. This part needs to be punched, then it needs to be deburred, then it needs to be cut to length, then it needs to be, you know, whatever, milled. So and EPICS handles that as well. But what it doesn't handle very well right now is that interrelationship between our the backlog and the schedule for the fab department as a whole, and all those various individual processes. And so it's complicated now to get really a look at the big picture, and then to also be able to drill down and see what our requirements are for punching today. All I know is I've got a bunch of stuff going to fab, but I don't know how many pieces are needing to go through each one of those steps. So our idea for this is to make that all much more transparent. And so our goals are to keep track of the backlog and the capacity and the scheduling for the entire fab department, as well as for all those individual fab processes, whether it's, you know, bending or punching or deburring or cut to length or whatever, whatever all those processes are. And then to be able to schedule those machines, particularly machines that can handle more than one process. So you might have a multi-tool that can do drilling, it can do punching, it can do countersinking, or another multi-tool that can do brushing or sanding or deburring. And so to be able to see that these jobs are all going out to, we got a bunch of jobs need to be drilled, we got a bunch of jobs need to be punched, we got a bunch of jobs need to be countersinked. We need a way to know, hey, those are all being handled by the same machine or the same group of machines, so that we know that we don't want to overload that one machine with jobs for all these various processes. And then once you've done that, it's nice to be able to see the production stats, not only for fabrication as a whole, but for each machine or for each process, so that we know, hey, this machine was utilized for 8 hours, 4 hours of it was doing punching, 3 hours of it was doing drilling, and the last hour was for doing, you know, countersinking or whatever the tasks were. So it gives you a much better way to analyze all of that data and see what your production rates are for each of those and what our backlog is going to be, et cetera. So to do that, basically we will allow you to create a parent fab department that knows about all the machines within that department and what types of machines they are, and then create child departments that contain a subset of those various machines. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So we have a single fab department. In this case, I've created a fab department that has 12 machines. I've got a couple of multi-tools that can do sanding and deburring and maybe grinding. I've got a dedicated brush machine that can do, you know, surface brushing. I've got a dedicated deburr machine. I've got a couple of drills that can do drilling and countersinking. I've got a bend press or a brake press. I've got a couple of punch machines. And then I've got 3 CNC machines that can do just about anything, but they may take longer. And we may want to hold those for just complicated milling operations that you know, multi-step operations that are best suited for those CNC machines. And again, you will be able to define however many machines you have, however many workstations you have in your fabrication department, and define give them a name. And then we'll see in the next screen, then you can actually assign those individual machines to multiple tasks that are actually used in the routings of your jobs. So again, you'll create a child department for each one of those fab processes. I'll have a department called punch, I'll have a department called drill, I'll have a cutback, I'll have a deburr. And any number of those machines that we saw in the previous tab, those 12 machines, I can assign to any of those departments. So punching, I might be able to do on machines 1, 3, 7, and 8. And for each one of those, I want to assign a standard rate. So here's the first example. So for my drilling department in Farmersville, in this case, I've got 5 machines that can do drilling. I've got 2 dedicated drills, which are machines 5 and 6 that we saw in that other screenshot. And then we've got 3 CNC machines that can also do drilling. But you notice I've assigned, well, each one of those we can make available. We've got 1 shift, and maybe we don't have enough people to man all those stations in the same shift, or maybe we can move people in and out of that department. But in any case, I'm going to say that I can make those machines all available for 8 hours a day. And these are the standard rates for drilling. I can drill 50 pieces an hour, again, a ballpark number on machines 5 and 6. The CNC machines take longer to set up, so I can only do 20 pieces an hour on those. Similarly, for countersinking, I've got 2 drills and I've got a CNC, my first CNC machine that I want to use for countersinking. So I define those. So any job that needs countersinking, I want to route to one of those 3 machines, again, with their own rates. For deburring, I've got those 2 multi-tools that I can do deburring on, as well as my dedicated deburr machine, which can run at a higher rate. I can process more pieces on it. So I've defined those as being members of this deburr category. And you will notice there's overlap. So some of these machines will be in multiple categories, and that's fine. That's what you want to do. And then the CNC department, just again, my 3 CNC machines are specifically for CNC. And so when I route things there, those are the 3 machines I want to use. So once those are all defined, and again, you'll have basically all these child departments that are, whether it's drilling, punching, deburring, that all refer to machines that are owned by the fabrication department. Then you create routings that run through each one of those child departments. So here, for example, I've got an order that needs to be, after it's aged, needs to be cut to length, then it needs to be drilled and deburred before it goes to packing. And so we don't actually route it to the fabrication parent department, we route it to the processes that it actually requires. And that's what you want to be able to do, so that we know exactly how many steps and what the rates will be for each one of those individual steps. And then you can assign custom rates to each one of those departments, actually each machine within each one of those departments for every individual part. So this particular part for deburring, we can deburr it either on machine 1 or 4, and we have a higher rate on machine 4, so we've made that the preferred machine. So when EPICS is going to fill the capacity plan, if you're using capacity planning, or when it's filling the backlog, it will pull that preferred machine first and say, well, if we can, we want to run that on machine 4. If not, we'll drop back and use machine 1. Similarly, for drilling, the drilling operation, we've got 2 machines there that we can use. We prefer machine 5, but we can also use machine 6. So these numbers for each part override those standard rates that we defined for each department. So obviously a part that needs more complicated milling is going to have a lower production rate than the standard would be for that machine. So what all that does is it lets you view or print your backlogs for each one of those machines, and it will show up on that machine whether that machine is punching a bunch of jobs today, or whether it's drilling today, or whatever, or a mix of those things, and view the schedule the same way. So you can view that either by the process that's being performed, so these are all the jobs that need to be punched today, or by machine. So we can say, well, my multi-tool today needs to run a bunch of sanding operations and a bunch of grinding operations and some deburrs all on the same schedule. So you'll have a mixed schedule for that machine that shows all the various jobs it needs to do and what it needs to do for those jobs. And so after you've collected all your data, similarly, you'll be able to view the production either by the fab process or by the individual machine. So we know, for example, today that shift 1 performed a deburr operation on 1,321 pieces on all of the machines that we deburred on for a total of 10.7 hours. And we can drill down and say, well, CNC machine 11, they processed 485 pieces today, and some of those were milled, some of them were punched, some of them may have been, had more complicated things performed on them. So To do that, what we'll be doing is collecting machine history for each machine in two places. So it'll be collected not only for the child department for for punch or for deburr or for drilling, but it will also be accumulated for the parent machine. So it's just machine one in the fab department did all these various things. So you'll be able to view that history in two places. So there'll be overlap, intentional. The fab department will accumulate the totals for all those departments, all the child departments, while you can still drill down to the child itself.